Some traders don't come to the market to make money. Not at first. They come to prove something. To prove they are smart enough. To prove they didn't miss their chance. To prove they can recover from something that already happened. This isn't obvious while you're inside it. It feels like motivation. It feels like urgency. It feels like focus. But it's not. It's pressure. And pressure has a very specific signature in trading behavior. You click faster than usual. You justify trades instead of evaluating them. You feel a subtle need to be right, not disciplined. I've watched this pattern repeat quietly across years of observation, and I've caught it in myself more times than I'd like to admit. Not as a dramatic emotional spike, just a low-grade tension. A sense that the next trade needs to mean something. That's the tell. When a trade starts carrying meaning beyond risk and probability, something has already shifted. You're no longer trading the market. You're negotiating with your identity. For some traders, this starts after a loss. For others, after a period of stagnation. For many, it starts before they ever place their first trade. Because trading attracts people who are trying to resolve something internal using an external system. The market becomes a mirror, and mirrors are dangerous when you're not ready to look neutrally. You don't say, I need this trade to prove I'm capable. You say, this setup looks good. You don't say, I'm trying to erase embarrassment. You say, I just need one clean win. But the behavior tells the truth, even when the language doesn't. Position size creeps up without a clear reason. Rules start to feel optional. Waiting feels intolerable. And when the trade loses, the reaction is rarely proportional. There's frustration, but underneath it, something sharper, almost personal. That's because the loss didn't just cost money. It challenged the story. A story about intelligence, about resilience, about not being the kind of person who fails at this. This is where trading becomes heavy, not chaotic, heavy. Every chart feels loaded. Every decision feels consequential. Every outcome feels like evidence for or against who you think you are. And when trading feels heavy, discipline doesn't disappear all at once. It erodes quietly. You still follow some rules. You still tell yourself you're being rational, but your threshold for justification drops. You stop asking, is this my trade? And start asking, could this work? That single shift explains more blown accounts than bad strategies ever will. Because markets don't respond to effort. They don't reward intention. And they don't care what you're trying to prove. They only expose it. If this channel speaks to the part of you that wants clarity instead of noise, consider subscribing, not for more trades, but for fewer unnecessary ones. Supporting this channel helps this message quietly reach traders who need restraint more than stimulation. The most dangerous phase isn't when you're emotional in obvious ways. It's when you're composed but loaded, calm on the surface, restless underneath. That's the trader who says, I'm fine, while slightly increasing frequency. Who says, I'm just active, while slowly abandoning selectivity. Proven energy doesn't shout, it whispers. And it disguises itself as discipline until the moment it breaks it. Some traders are trying to prove they belong. Others are trying to prove they're different from who they used to be. Some are trying to prove a loss was a fluke. The market doesn't know which one you are, but it will respond the same way to all of them, by offering infinite opportunities to self-sabotage. If any part of this feels familiar, that's not a flaw. It's an early signal. Recognition comes before control. And most traders never slow down long enough to notice what they're actually trading for. When you trade to prove something, decision-making changes structurally, not emotionally. Structurally, the brain stops optimizing for expectancy and starts optimizing for relief. Relief from doubt. Relief from comparison. Relief from the quiet fear that you might not be as good as you thought. This is why confidence is such a misleading word in trading. What looks like confidence is often urgency without clarity. I've seen traders describe their mindset as focused when what they really mean is compressed. Their time horizon collapses. everything becomes about now. Now I need a win. Now I need confirmation. Now I need to feel settled. That compression has consequences. First, it shortens patience. Waiting feels like avoidance instead of discipline. Second, it blurs invalidation. You stop clearly defining what would make the trade wrong. And third, it inflates significance. Each outcome carries emotional weight far beyond its statistical importance. This is the internal mechanism behind overtrading, revenge trading, and forced execution. Not lack of knowledge, not lack of tools, identity pressure. When identity enters the decision loop, rules stop functioning as constraints and start functioning as suggestions. You don't consciously break them. You reinterpret them. This is close enough. The context supports it. I've seen this work before. Those phrases are not analysis. They're permission slips. One of the most reliable ways to spot proven behavior is to listen to how a trader explains a trade after it's placed. Clean trades are explained simply. Loaded trades require storytelling. More words, more context, more justification. I've caught myself doing this, explaining a trade in a way that sounds intelligent but feels defensive. That's usually my signal to step back, not lean in. The market doesn't reward clever explanations. It rewards alignment with conditions. This is where behavior engineering becomes necessary, because insight alone doesn't dissolve identity pressure. Awareness helps you see it. Structure is what contains it. The first structural rule is this: no trade is allowed to carry symbolic meaning. Not redemption, not validation, not proof. If a trade feels like it matters beyond its expected value, it's disqualified. That sounds simple, but it requires a concrete protocol to enforce. One effective constraint is a pre-trade labeling rule. Before execution, the trade must be described in one neutral sentence that contains only 3 elements: condition, entry logic, invalidation. No narrative, no comparison, no reference to recent performance. If you can't describe the trade this way, it's not a trade, it's an argument with yourself. Another constraint is outcome insulation. This means deciding in advance that no single trade is allowed to influence behavior, not emotionally and not practically. That requires fixed risk and fixed frequency. When frequency is capped, urgency has nowhere to go. When risk is fixed, proven impulses lose leverage. I've noticed that the moment I reduce my allowable trades per session, my internal dialogue quiets. Not because I became more disciplined, but because the structure removed the need to decide. Decision removal is the core of behavior engineering. You don't overcome proven impulses by being stronger. You sidestep them by making them irrelevant. The final mechanism to understand is delayed identity resolution. When you trade to prove something, you're asking the market to resolve an internal question quickly. Am I good enough? Did I waste time? Can I recover? Markets resolve nothing quickly. They only provide feedback over large samples. Trying to compress that process creates friction, and friction creates force. Force leads to errors. The solution is not patience as a virtue. It's patience as a system outcome. If your rules force you to wait, proven energy dissipates on its own. Not because you mastered it, because it had nothing to attach to. Resolution in trading doesn't come from answers. It comes from boundaries. The goal is not to eliminate the desire to prove something. That desire is human, competitive, predictable. The goal is to prevent it from influencing execution. This is where strategy context matters, but only as an environment for discipline. One simple framework works well here: condition-based participation. The idea is straightforward. You are either allowed to trade or you are not. And that permission is based on external conditions, not internal states. For example, a trader might only participate when volatility exceeds a predefined threshold and structure is clearly directional. Outside of those conditions, no trade is possible, not avoided, not delayed, impossible. This removes the internal debate entirely. When proven energy shows up, it finds a closed door. No conditions, no trade, I use this kind of framework because it reframes inactivity. You're no longer missing opportunities. You're respecting environmental filters. The market is either offering your setup or it isn't. Your feelings are irrelevant. Just as important is knowing when not to trade. After a loss, after a win, after a deviation, these are not emotional rules. They're contamination rules. Any event that increases identity activation temporarily disqualifies you. This is not punishment. It's containment. Over time, something subtle happens. You stop expecting trades to resolve anything about you. They become procedural, boring even. That's not a loss of passion. It's a gain of stability. I've found that the less I expect from individual trades, the more accurately I execute them. Not because I care less, but because I'm no longer asking them to carry weight they were never meant to hold. The market is not a judge. It's not a scoreboard. And it's not a therapist. It's an environment that rewards alignment and exposes misalignment. When you stop trading to prove something, you don't become passive. You become precise. And precision is quiet. If this perspective felt steady rather than exciting, you're likely in the right place. Quiet trader exists for those who value control over stimulation and structure over urgency.